So I wanted, before we get started, to let everyone know that I have a new podcast out, and it's called Meditations. If you like the Meditations segment of this current podcast, you'll like the Meditations podcast. It's nothing but 20 minutes of meditative sounds. And now, on with the podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Caesar's Palace for 12 rounds of boxing. In the red corner, from Los Angeles, California, wearing the red trunks with the gold trim, weighing in at 125 pounds, the lightweight champion of the world, Danny Little Red Lopez. Well, Bill, our winners get a home theater receiver. That's right. Experience the full potential of high-definition video with this 72-channel digital home theater receiver from Yamaha. But wait, that's not all. They also get a 5.1-channel surround sound system from Mirage. With 5 palm-sized speakers and a compact subwoofer cube, the MX 5.1 brings you huge immersive sound with Mirage's omnipolar technology. All from the Spiegel catalog, Chicago, Illinois, 60609. And they're taking closer order as down the stretch they come. Mr. Hot Stuff has 3 lengths to make up with chocolate candy last. On the rail, take the points behind that gallant son with chocolate candy gaining on the outside. In the lead is Pioneer of the Nile being tackled by chocolate candy. They're neck and neck as they come to the wire. And Pioneer of the Nile holds off chocolate candy and wins the Santa Anita Derby. And now, on your feet, time to greet holder of 14 NBA titles, your home team, your Los Angeles Lakers. Number 3 at 6'8", 5th year out of UCLA, playing forward, Trevor Ariza. Starting at center, number 17 at 7 feet, 4th year out of St. Andrews High School, Andrew Bynum. And at guard, number 24, 6'6", 13th season out of Loyal Marion High School, Kobe Bryant.
This is the greatest Jew joke I've ever heard that I love. You're not going to get it.
Okay.
Are you Jewish?
Yeah.
Okay, then you'll get it. The setup of the joke is it's a Jew joke.
Okay.
2 Gentile businessmen meet on the street. One of them says, "How's business?" The other one says, "Great."
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Apollo Wednesday, June the 11th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the headlines, patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, and Apollo. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now the headlines for Wednesday, June the 11th. Florida will not let inmates run the asylum. We are not going to sit by and let people take pot shots at the men and women of law enforcement. Florida is and will remain a law and order state. And that's by Ron DeSantis. Anarchy and true chaos. Senator Fetterman blasts his own party for refusing to condemn LA violence. The DNC filed a lawsuit challenging President Trump's executive authority, but the federal court rejected the DNC lawsuit and affirmed President Trump's authority. Trump-endorsed Jack Ciattarelli wins Republican primary for New Jersey governor. During congressional testimony Tuesday, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth lashed out at California Governor Gavin Newsom and defended the deployment of National Guard troops and Marines to respond to immigration protests in Los Angeles. Atlanta is a war zone. Tear gas, rioters throwing fireworks at police. Crowds hit public pools in Sioux Falls to cool off. Fetterman emerges as Dems' voice of reason as L.A. burns, conservatives say. Webb telescope uncovers water ice around HD 181327 young sun-like star 155 light years from Earth. And those are the headlines for Wednesday, June the 11th. Thank you. And now, the political corner.
Hello, this is Brigitte Gabrielle. Who is funding and organizing the Los Angeles riots against ICE? Well, I have a list of them for you. We are watching thugs waving other countries' flags while burning the American flag, screaming Allahu Akbar, waving Palestinian flags, and Spanish slurs while waving the Mexican and El Salvadorian flags. The Red-Green Alliance is on full display. These riots are organized by organizations with ties to the Democratic Party and the Chinese Communist Party. One of the leading groups is the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, SHIRLA, who received $34 million in government grants, which raises questions about taxpayer money fueling the riots. These groups are also advertising on Craigslist, paying people top dollars weekly to be, excuse my French, tough bad asses in Los Angeles. They are seeking a select crew of highly capable and fearless men for what appears to be a high-risk private contract role in Los Angeles, California. Here's a list of confirmed organizers. Party for Socialism and Liberation, PSL, which led protests outside City Hall under the slogan, National Guard Go Away, ICE Out of LA, promoting socialist rhetoric and anti-law enforcement sentiment. Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, supported rioters and scheduled protests amplifying anti-ICE narratives and encouraging documentation of ICE activities. Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, SHIRLA, organized resistance and denounced ICE raids. SHIRLA is funded partly by government grants, activated the Los Angeles Rapid Response Network to report ICE sightings. Service Employees International Union, SEIU, California. Its president was arrested for obstructing ICE agents, framing raids as injustice. They rallied protesters, escalating tensions. Union del Barrio, a communist group, it activated protests via social media with their printed materials prominent at the riots. Stop LAPD Spying Coalition. Joint protests pushing anti-police narratives alongside immigrant rights rhetoric. Black Alliance for Peace participated with small crowdfunding grants aligning with anti-American and pro-Palestinian slogans. Center CSO, led by figures like Ron Gochez, it organized riots with Union del Barrio, a self-described Raza internationalist organization dedicated to the liberation of Mexican and Latino communities within U.S. borders through revolutionary means. Antifa coordinated violent actions. Their anti-authoritarian stance aligns with riot tactics. Anti-Semitic graffiti like F Jews and pro-Palestinian chants by groups like the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights reveal a broader hateful agenda. When protests cease to be peaceful and jeopardize law enforcement and community safety, seeking to supplant our constitutional republic with democratic socialism through violence, they should be rounded up and deported if they are illegal aliens or otherwise jailed.
And that was the political corner. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the patriotic short.
He just wanted to trade a year of military service for a stable future, but led a group of ordinary soldiers to accomplish a legendary battle in World War II. When Richard Winters jumped out of the cabin with 400 paratroopers in the early morning of June 6, 1944, this young Army officer from a Pennsylvania farm even lost his rifle when he landed. Yet in the next 10 hours, he led 13 soldiers to destroy 4 105mm howitzers. Born in Lancaster in 1918, Winters completed his studies at Franklin Marshall College in June 1941 while juggling 3 part-time jobs. He graduated with the highest academic achievement in the business school and earned a bachelor's degree in economics. In August 1941, when this 23-year-old economics graduate voluntarily walked into the recruiting station, he just wanted to trade a year of military service for a stable future career. In 1943 at Aldbourne Camp in England, when his superior Captain Sobel suppressed him with false accusations, the officers threatened to resign collectively to demand a change of command. And this unexpected storm gave birth to the legendary Band of Brothers that later swept across Europe. On D-Day, Winters landed in the darkness of a French farmland, weaponless, but quickly assembled 12 lost paratroopers. In this battle, later known as the Brécourt Manor Assault, Winters used tactics that are still studied at West Point today. With 13 men, they annihilated 50 enemy soldiers, destroyed all the artillery pieces, and captured critical fortification maps. When General Omar Bradley pinned the Distinguished Service Cross on him, this 26-year-old lieutenant had already written the most brilliant battlefield legend of the 101st Airborne Division.
And that was the patriotic short. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, motivation.
This is your year. This is your time. This is your moment. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to capture it? Or are you going to let it slip away? Eminem said it. If you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you've ever wanted, would you capture it? Or would you let it slip away? And so I ask you the question, how bad do you want it? How bad do you want it? Do you want it as bad as you want to breathe? Or do you just kind of want it?
What's the single most important key to success above anything else? It's not talent, it's not skill, it's hunger.
The common backstory for the successful people is hunger. Intelligence is not it. There are people less intelligence, less skill, less ability to perform at a higher level because they never lose their hunger. How do you create your life? You get hungry for something, don't you? If you get enough hunger going in you for an answer, you'll find the answer. If you get a hunger enough inside of you that says, I got to take things to a next level, I got to achieve, I got to make a difference, I got to expand, you will find the answer. People's intelligence will expand if they got enough hunger. But if you got everything and you're not hungry, you're not going to have much.
Anybody can do anything and set their mind to. It depends on how bad you want it.
And if you want it as bad as you want to breathe, nobody can stop you.
Personal power means the ability to take action, to follow through, to take the steps that are necessary to take an idea and translate it into reality. And it's the number one tool that most people in life never exercise, and the gift that every one of us has right now and at any moment in our life. You can start using your power. You can start following through. You can take this idea in your head and turn it into physical reality. Whether that idea is how you want to make your relationship, or the kind of money you want to make, or a business you want to start, it doesn't matter. It is available right now. All you do is decide and then follow through. See, Michael Jackson can move the way he does because every single day, the question he asks himself is, how can I make this better? Where focus goes, energy flows. What are you going to focus on? Because whatever you focus on, you feel and you move towards. It's your decisions that are controlling your destiny. So the first decision you make every moment is, what are you going to focus on? You want to change your life? Make a new choice. You want to change your income? You can go to 1 million classes on making more money. Until you make a shift into what is a must for you, you won't. When you do, you'll find the way. Concentration of power says this. If you focus on something every single day and you ask yourself, how can I improve it? And you demand from yourself that somehow it has to get better, you will master that area of focus. I don't care what it is. And if you don't have what you want, stop telling yourself the story because you don't have the money over time. That's bullshit. It's because you haven't committed yourself where you would burn your boats. If you want to take the fucking island, burn your fucking boats, and you will take the island, because people, when they're going to either die or succeed, tend to succeed.
The power to hold on in spite of everything, the power to endure, the hunger, the ability to face defeat again and again without giving up. When you're hungry, you don't care about the facts. You don't care about the odds. This is a winner's quality. You have that quality within you. The people that are running at their dreams are the people that are hungry, that know if it's going to happen, it's up to them. They know they're going to have hard times. They keep on running because they're saying within themselves, I'm the one. No matter how bad it is or how bad it gets, I'm going to make it. Commitment. It means taking a stand for you. Commit means to carry into action deliberately. Commit means to make it happen no matter what. See, when you make a commitment, I'm going to become wealthy. When you make it important, when you decide I'm going to do it no matter what, life changes for you. See, most people don't keep their commitments to their commitments. That's why they lead lives of misery, lives of unhappiness. Whatever commitment that you make, keep your commitment to your commitment, no matter what. If it's hard, then do it hard. We say, oh, it's too hard, it's too hard. We don't challenge our spirit. Ladies and gentlemen, there's nothing as powerful as the human spirit. You can't destroy it. You can pervert it, but you can't destroy it. The universe responds to the man or woman that refuses to be denied. That business that you want, that book you want to write, that dream that you have of controlling your destiny, that is yours. But you've got to be willing to stand there and face disappointment, not have support, be lonely, doubt yourself sometimes, be rejected again and again and again, and refuse to turn around until life gives it up. If you just decide, I'm going to keep my word. If I say something, I'm going to do it regardless. Being more disciplined, more focused.
Don't look for any gains where there's been no sacrifice. Don't look for your game to improve. Don't look for the record to improve. Without sacrifice, there are no gains. Only those who are willing to risk going too far can possibly find out how far one can go. Look, you gotta want it as bad as you want to breathe. And when you want it as bad as you want to breathe says, I'm willing to make any sacrifice. I'm willing to go through any pain. I'm willing to go through any suffering. I'm willing to go through whatever it takes. So when I get in there, then I guarantee you, at the end of it, I won't be the one that surrendered. When you
want something bad, you can't count the cost. Because if you count the cost and you see how much it costs, you might quit. You might give up. So you got to go in knowing that I don't count the cost. I do as many push-ups as it takes, as many reps as it takes. I study as long as it takes. I pay whatever the price is. Why? Because if I start counting the cost, I might quit. I might give up. I might surrender. Don't count the cost. You just do whatever it takes to get whatever you want. In those times when you want to quit, you make sure you remember one thing. All those times and hours and days you sacrifice to be the best. You will never regret making a sacrifice, ever.
Ta-da! Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, meditation.
Imagination is more important than knowledge. Our knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Our knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world. Imagination is more important than knowledge. Our knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world.
knowledge is sleep.
And that was meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Daily Stoic.
What time off is for? Leisure without study is death, a tomb for the living person. Seneca, Moral Letters, 82.4.
And that was the Daily Stoic. And now, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron.
Each individual person is a subject of infinite dignity, but not the creator of value. See, I think everybody, that is supremely dangerous talk. When we say that the sovereign self invents value, we are on a very short road to a moral chaos. Rather, we would say at the heart of our social theory ought to be love. What's love? Not a feeling. Love is an act of the will. It's to will the good of the other. If I'm inventing value, I got my value, you got your value, and let's just vaguely tolerate each other, then we can't love each other. Because love has to display itself, as it were, against the background of a hierarchy of objective value. Otherwise, I don't know what I should will for you.
And that was His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron. And now, the Ayn Rand thought of the day. Quote, "The government control of the economy, no matter in whose behalf, has been the source of all the evils in our industrial history, and the solution is laissez-faire capitalism, i.e. the abolition of any and all forms of government intervention in production and trade, the separation of state and economics, in the same way and for the same reasons as the separation of church and state," unquote. And that was Ayn Rand from the chapter Notes on the History of the American Free Enterprise from the book Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, gaslighting.
Gaslighting is a mind control strategy that is purposely, systematically done to control another person by changing their thoughts, feelings, memories, and their belief system about who they are. I call that a gaslit self-narrative. As I explained in my Human Magnet Syndrome book, we all have a self-narrative. Let's pretend we're being interviewed and they ask us, "Who are you?" You know, those searching questions. Well, we start talking to them about ourselves. Well, the gaslit narrative is the same process, but the information that you believe was covertly, secretly implanted into your mind, and the environment was systematically changed so that it could prove to you that you have problems or you are or are not a certain type of person. Gaslighters are covert narcissists. After a while, the covert narcissist reconfigures your mind, reconfigures your personal narrative, and the story that you believe is not accurate anymore, but you don't.
I've always said that a surefire sign.
And that was gaslighting. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Maria Bartiromo and then Stu.
Military, and they've turned that around in 4 months in, recruiting's up, morale's better, and it's good for the future.
I don't know if you've ever been to a military funeral, but they gave my father such an incredible funeral, and it was just, I thank the Army so much for the way they honored my father, who was in the Army.
And speaking to the morale thing, the morale for the American people is up. People love this country. The people of America are a great people. We are a nation. We're not just a market or an economic zone. And people are so excited to finally cheer them on the streets.
And thank you for President Trump making it a priority.
Right.
And making America great again. I didn't realize how far we'd gone astray until I see where we are now. And thank you.
Adam Johnson, Jonathan Fahey, Chris Johnson, thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you again tomorrow. Varney and Company picks it up. Stu, take it away.
Good morning, Maria. Good morning, everyone. Curfew in Los Angeles. Elon Musk semi-apologizes to the president. Trump says we have a deal with China. But we will start with inflation. Last month, prices went up just 0.1%. In the last year, prices have gone up 2.4%. Now, that's up a little compared to the previous month, but that monthly figure is a moderation in the monthly inflation rate. Here's the market reaction. Also, remember, Trump says he's got a deal with China, so the market's reacting a little bit to that. The Dow up about 60, S&P 15, NASDAQ up 72 points. Bitcoin about 109,700 at the moment. And the 10-year Treasury yields below 4.5%. You're back to 4.44. The 2-year coming in at 3.96. Let's get to the Los Angeles situation. These developments. Mayor Karen Bass imposed a curfew overnight. A federal court has said no to Governor Newsom's suit to stop the deployment of the National Guard. 4,000 guardsmen are in the city. 700 Marines may start to appear today. Democrats still blame Trump for the violence. Maxine Waters says there was no violence before Trump sent in the troops. Meanwhile, scenes of looting and violent protest, complete with Mexican flags, continue to appear on everyone's news feed. Politics. Democrats are losing the Los Angeles situation politically, and they seem to know it. Prominent articles in the Washington Post and the New York Times suggest they are in political trouble because the rioting brings the narrative back to their failed border and immigration policies. Elon Musk almost says this. Well, he's almost said he's sorry. Almost. He said this: I regret some of my posts about President Trump last week. They went too far. Will he back off from his contempt for Trump's big, beautiful bill? Don't know. Republican senators meet today to consider their position. And there's this. Trump writes on Truth Social, our deal with China is done. Magnets and rare earths will be supplied up front by China. Likewise, we will provide to China what was agreed to, including Chinese students using our colleges. That does not sound like a total settlement of all outstanding issues, but it seems like progress. Wednesday, June 11th, 2025.
And that was Maria Bartiromo and Stu Varney. Non-profit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now the preamble to the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Back in a minute. Thank you. So here's an article. It's in Real Clear Politics, but it's from a subsection called Real Clear Education. And it's called The Emotionally Intelligent Classroom by Robin Stern, Zorana Pringle, and Mark Brackett. And it was written on June the 9th. And it's about schools. It says Emotionally Intelligent Classroom. So, and I'm recommending this article because this is a good article so that you find out what it is the left is up to. It's so much better if when things seem to come out of the woodwork, all of a sudden they pop up. Where did this come from? When did this get started? So if you read articles like this, you understand where it is the left is going, what it is that they're planning on doing. So that way you're prepared. Robin Stern is one of the authors, is the co-founder and senior advisor to the director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and a psychoanalyst in private practice. Zorana Pringle is a senior research scientist at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. Mark Brackett is the founding director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence and a professor in the Child Study Center at Yale. And so all of these people, I imagine, have grounding in psychology, especially Robin Stern. And so you know that the article is going to be very manipulative. And it is. The article assumes a lot. And because that's the way that the left uses power. The power of it, fake it till you make it type of activity, like Hillary Clinton said. So, again, Real Clear Education, the emotionally intelligent classroom, and I recommend the article so that you can be better prepared for what's coming. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, what does the phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing, mean? This was said by Ronald Reagan, speaking of political campaigns. From the perspective of your audience, if you have to explain yourself, you come off looking desperate to convince. As a consequence, you lose the high ground. From a more philosophical perspective, if you have a clear conscience and strong conviction towards the positions you take, your values, truth, and direction, you don't need the opinions or consent of others. As a consequence, you don't need to explain yourself. However, if you yourself are not convinced of the validity and truth of your position, or you can't fully justify your choices, then you continue to expel words in an attempt to create the illusion of certainty. Back in a minute. Thank you. So, gaslighting. I had a situation the other day where I was being gaslit by a doctor in regards to some medication. And it was weight loss medication. And I was concerned about side effects. And I said, because this one has side effects, that has side effects, these are side effects for the third one. And I said, why don't you just contact me when you can find something without side effects? And the doctor said, well, everything has side effects. Even exercise has a side effect of, say, soreness. So now what the doctor is doing is gaslighting at this particular point, because the doctor is moving from the literal meaning of side effects, because medication is what has side effects. In the case of the main effect is weight loss, but the side effect is, say, your heart rhythm is affected, because in some cases they want you to give up an EKG so they can monitor your heart rate while you're on the medication, so that the fluttering of your heart or the rapid beating of your heart is a side effect. It's not what's intended. And so then going and talking about what is a normal, not a side effect, but a regular effect of exercise. Soreness or stiffness is an effect of exercise. But they do that, again, in order to discourage the person that they're gaslighting from arguing with them, from discussing things. And that's extremely bad form when you're dealing with medicine, because I, as a patient, need to have my concerns consulted. Once I've said no, thanks, once I've said no, that's the end of that. There shouldn't be any argument afterwards. But anyways, that's an example of gaslighting, and something for you to look out for, especially on social media. People that are would-be conservatives should practice on social media, because then you can take the time to read and study what it is that people are saying and doing. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now from a book that's called Good Inside. What's the opposite of understanding? For this argument's sake, it's convincing. Convincing is the attempt to prove a singular reality, to prove that only one thing is true. Convincing is an attempt to be right, and as a result make the other person wrong. It rests on the assumption that there's only one correct viewpoint. And then my question is this supposed to be convincing? Further, convincing has one goal in mind, being right. And here's the unfortunate consequence of being right. The other person feels unseen and unheard, at which point most people become infuriated and combative, because it feels as if the other person does not accept your realness or worth. Feeling unseen and unheard makes connection impossible. Understanding two things are true and convincing one thing is true are diametrically opposed ways of approaching other people, so a powerful first step in any interaction is to notice which mode you're in. When you're in one thing is true mode, you're judgmental of and reactive to someone else's experience because it feels like an assault on your own truth. As a result, you will seek to prove your own point of view, which in turn makes the other person defensive because they need to uphold the realness of their experience. In one thing is true mode, exchanges escalate quickly. Each person thinks they're arguing about the content of the conversation when in fact they're trying to defend that they are a real, worthy person with a real, truthful experience. And again, is this convincing? Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Apollo.
3. The man most obviously on the spot at North American was Stormy Storms, head of North American's Space Division. He was a proud man with a proud history, the engineer who had guided the development and production of the X-15. But the fire had happened on his watch and the pressure was relentless. While Gilruth continued to think highly of Storms, Lowe, Phillips, and Miller were agreed that Storms had to go. Storms himself thought he was being unjustifiably crucified, in the words of one of his close associates. "There's not a goddamn thing wrong with those spacecraft," he remembered Storms saying shortly after the fire. "If they want to fly one this December, just fly what we've got." Few others agreed, and the fact that Storms could think nothing needed fixing was persuasive evidence to them that he wasn't the man to rescue the contract. Webb called in Lee Atwood, now North American's chairman, and told him that Storms had to go or NASA would turn to another contractor. However unrealistic the threat, if carried out, it would have hurt NASA as badly as North American. The word around Downey was that Webb had already held preliminary meetings with Boeing for just that purpose. Storms was retired from his position as president of the Space Division. The man whom Lee Atwood chose to rescue the situation was Bill Bergen. For 30 years, Bergen had been one of the star engineers at the Martin Company, the company that had originally been recommended for the spacecraft contract back in 1961. When the Apollo fire occurred, he had just become corporate vice president at North American for the Space and Propulsion Group, meaning that Stormy Storms' Space Division came under him. Bergen was at an air show in Phoenix when he got the call from Lee Atwood. Bergen volunteered to give up the Space and Propulsion Group and take over the Space Division to demote himself, just as Lowe and Shea had demoted themselves before him. "God bless you," said Atwood. Bergen took over his new job on April Fool's Day. "People think I came in here and turned this place around like crazy," said Bergen later. But he claimed that he hadn't. "I think if you look back at it soberly, there were very few changes made, but some very key ones. One of the first of them was to send Bastian Hello, known as Buzz, to take over North American's Cape operation. Buzz Hello arrived at the Cape on May 7, 1967, to find a place where, in his words, morale had sagged like a clothesline with ice on it. The North American people at the Cape were the people who had somehow burned up 3 astronauts. They had no way of knowing where they had failed, what they had done wrong, Hello recalled. They had lost very close friends of theirs in the spacecraft. The whole world had turned against them. There was no one particular thing that had to be fixed. You just sort of wade into it, Hello said. It's like a gigantic piece of cheese. You've got to start biting somewhere. Hello saw that somehow there had to be a welding together of his people. It could take the form of small psychological things, like a campaign to keep all the workplaces immaculate.
or of organizational things like designating a separate room for tracking the status of each spacecraft, a place where that spacecraft schedule, test preparation sheets, engineering orders, and test results could be posted and tracked. So it's perfectly clear who's doing what to who and who's holding the bucket of water. Or of training things like crew qualification, in which each person who worked on the spacecraft had to undergo a stand board, appearing before a panel of 3 or 4 of his peers to be cross-examined on the workings of his system. But the most important thing that Buzz Hello did to turn the situation at the Cape around was to hire Tom O'Malley. By 1967, Thomas J. O'Malley had been working at the Cape for 10 years. First, he had run Convair's Cape office for the Atlas program. In Mercury days, the man with his finger on the launch button for the Atlas launches was Tom O'Malley. During Gemini, O'Malley had been with General Dynamics on the Atlas Agena, then was promoted away from the Cape to the foggy precincts of New London, Connecticut, to be a senior manager in the General Dynamics Electric Boat Division. Now Hello wanted him for North American, and O'Malley wanted to come home to the space program. A Bellerin type, said one of the spacecraft inspectors who were perpetually at war with him. He was a driver, a real driver, said Buzz Hello. There are very few people down here that work as hard as Tom O'Malley, and woe be unto the man who tries to pass some short story off on him because he has probably been there himself a little earlier in the morning and stayed a little later at night. Feeding him a short story is death? Asked Hello's interviewer. It's worse than that, said Hello. It's torture and death. There was not a whole lot of this tough but fair business about Tom O'Malley either. On the contrary, he tended to form opinions about people on limited data points sometimes, which bothered me, said a Cape engineer who worked closely with him. He got on fine with me because we'd been together a lot in the past, so he had me calibrated and I had him calibrated. But sometimes if a guy didn't say the right thing the first time he met him, that guy was doomed. What O'Malley had going for him was a ruthless integrity about getting the job done, as well as an absolute indifference about whom he offended in the course of doing it. And that's why Hello hired him. O'Malley soon decided that North American had been running what he called a country club down at the Cape. One of the first days after he took the job, an engineer came to him to get a routine signature on a travel order. He was going out to a convention of retired Air Force officers in San Francisco. O'Malley told him that they weren't doing business that way anymore. The engineer was outraged. Those conventions were an important way for a company like North American to tie into the old boy network, and such trips had always been one of the perks. He got hold of an ex-general who was a senior executive at Downey. The ex-general complained to Bill Bergen. Bill Bergen chewed out the ex-general for interfering with O'Malley and said that anyway O'Malley was right. The word quickly spread that the old days were over. O'Malley was out at the pad one day watching liquid oxygen being pumped from a tank up onto the umbilical tower. He asked the engineer where the LOX was being pumped to. It beats the hell out of me, the engineer replied. Once it gets up there, I don't know what happens to it. Shortly after that, O'Malley called a meeting. Thenceforth, every engineer was expected to learn everything about the system he was running, where the stuff came from, where it was going, and all the things that might go wrong in between. And they did. You understood it from the very beginning of the tank farm to the last nut and connector in that system, said one engineer, and you could just about close your eyes and draw a schematic of the electrical and mechanical systems by heart. Everybody had a thing called a smarts book, and in that smarts book, each system engineer had every fact that you could possibly collect about that system that you worked on. You understood that system from womb to tomb, and there was nothing in that system you couldn't recite by heart, including torque values, safety wire specs, you name it, and a system engineer down there could tell you what it was. Those guys were terribly intense. If O'Malley was not always the most judicious and fairest of men, he was nonetheless the most loyal when he respected someone. If I'd asked my guys to push that VAB building over, they'd be out there trying to do it, O'Malley said. You couldn't get a bunch like I had. And those who worked for O'Malley assumed that, if he had asked them to push over the VAB, somehow that's what they would do. O'Malley is unique in this program, said John Tribe, who worked for him from Mercury days through Apollo. He's rough, bluff, crude, calls a spade, Language is pretty bad at times, but by golly, he knew what had to be done in 1967. Out at Downey, Bill Bergen went looking for John Healy, another of his old colleagues from Martin. Bergen had decided to put a senior manager in charge of each vehicle. One guy who was Mr. Spacecraft 101, one who was Mr. 102, and so forth. For the first manned vehicle, Spacecraft 101, upon which not only North America's future but the future of the Apollo program depended, Bergen chose Healy, a 45-year-old engineer. As Bergen reminisced, John became really quite a controversial person for a while. There was, for example, Healy's first briefing of North America's Apollo management team in Downey on September 29, 1967, when, to get their attention for the century, as Healy put it, I said, "Hey, I think you guys are full of shit. You're in trouble and you ought to stop acting like it's going to go away." There was, for example, Healy's first meeting with NASA 4 days later, when he announced to Phillips, Miller, Lowe, Reese, and Gilruth, most of Apollo senior management, that NASA had an unworkably unwieldy system with multiple directions and parallel activities. Effective that day, Healy said, NASA had a choice. Either they could let the subsystems people call him direct, or they could assign one guy to work with him. But nobody who had anything they wanted done with Spacecraft 101 could go through anyone but Healy. And by the way, Healy added, he was tired of all these modifications that NASA kept asking for. From now on, no more. If you're willing to pay for it, okay, Mr. Customer. If NASA wanted the spacecraft built, Healy told them, they had to stop asking for so many changes. And then, Healy recounted, I turned around and looked at all the North American guys smiling and said, now let me clear some things up for you guys. You can't keep on freely reacting to the customer's directions just because they seem to agree with your own idea of what you want to do. You think they're a problem? Well, you're an equal problem. And so on. Healy had a wonderful time that day, rammed all kinds of new assholes, he said. Out on the assembly facility, Healy came to grips with a peculiar reality of assembling a spacecraft. The thousands of people involved in the program were jammed right up into a small opening in the funnel of 5 people in the command module. For that was the most that could fit into the spacecraft. Healy figured that at any given moment, the time of those 5 was more precious than anyone else's, and he went down onto the shop floor and told that to the technicians. No longer would they have to get out of the command module to find a new drawing or tool or part. He, John Healy, would make sure that they got the support they needed so they wouldn't have to waste that kind of time. I told the working people that, and they kind of smiled. I said, no, I mean it. I'll do it. And he did. If a welder working in the spacecraft had a question that needed to be answered by the chief engineer, then the chief engineer would break off whatever he was doing, get himself down to the assembly room, climb the steps up to the door of the command module, and deal with it. I had vice presidents chasing plans so workers could stay in the command module, Healy recalled. The momentum picked up almost instantaneously. Just a week after Healy came on board, Lowe was writing to Gilruth regarding some of the problems that Grumman was having with the lunar module and saying that Grumman needs a Healy to get things back on track. On May 29, 1968, 8 months after Healy took over Spacecraft 101, it left Downey on a transport plane and arrived the next day at the Cape. A few days later, the receiving inspectors reported to Houston that they had found fewer discrepancies than any on any spacecraft previously delivered to Kennedy. Telling the story of North Americans' recovery from the fire from the vantage point of Bergen, Hello, O'Malley, and Healy captures only one small fragment. There is Kenny Kleinknecht's story as he became ASPO's point man for the CSM, or the story of Max Faget's engineers who worked through the redesign issues after the fire, or of Frank Borman's Tiger team, or of Eberhard Reese's team from Marshall. The measure of all their successes is this. Spacecraft 101 was the first of 15 manned Apollo spacecraft launched from the Kennedy Space Center. Those 15 spacecraft functioned in space for a total of 280 days, in Earth orbit, lunar transit, lunar orbit, docked with Skylab, and in rendezvous with a Soviet spacecraft on the Apollo-Soyuz mission in 1975. One was hit by lightning during the launch phase. Another, through no fault of North American, lost most of its electrical power halfway to the moon, had to be shut down for more than 3 days in the cold of space, and was powered up again just before entry. All the astronauts returned safely, riding a spacecraft they had come to love.
And that was Chapter 16, Part 3 of Apollo by Charles Murray and Catherine Bly Cox. Back in a minute. Thank you. And this is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that rights are not collective. They are joint and several.